again, it is I, Derek from Tomkat Gas Training, and welcome to this video, which is a continuation of the last video about the sequence of operation of a gas boiler. But before we get into this video, please will you take some time to subscribe because it helps the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell because you want YouTube to tell you that we upload videos on Mondays and Wednesdays. So there's enough waffling now, so let's get on with it and find out what's happening in the second part of this video. Now then, in the second part of this video on the sequence of operation of a gas boiler, we're going to visually look now and see what happens when these individual components fail, to give you some idea of what you're looking for when you go to look at a fault for a boiler. Now again guys, not every boiler is the same, but a lot of them still do the same kind of faults and are all in the same kind of sequence. So, like I said before, let's stop waffling and let's get into that workshop now and find out what I mean. So come on then. So the first thing we're going to simulate broken is the starting point of this boiler, which is the pump. So, remember, we're following health and safety. I've removed the plug. And yes guys, if your boiler is fitted on a plug, you should have a 3 amp fuse in there, and it should be on a unswitched socket. Best practice would be a fuse spur, but this is on a plug. Now, I've taken the back of the protection for the PCB, so I can do this. And looking at the manufacturer's instructions, I found the pump is fed from H1. So if I just remove here at H1, so I've removed the plug off the board now, and I'll just put this back up so I don't get electrocuted. And I'm going to plug it back in and turn it on. So we're now simulating that the pump isn't working. So let's find out what happens to this boiler. Now again, I've left the combustion chamber cover off so you can see the burner and see what happens with the burner. So obviously health and safety guys. So if I turn it on, go through the pre-perch as we found out in the first video. So, I'm going to turn the time clock on now to simulate the central heating coming on. Let's see what happens. So, the gas is still fired up. I can feel making a banging noise. The temperatures are going rapidly up on the front panel here on the display. So we got to 75 degrees and it knocked off, and it's now given me an F9 fault. So let's have a look in the manufacturer's instructions and see what F9 is. So according to the manufacturer's instructions, F9 is water pressure sensor fault. So it doesn't actually say pump fault, it says water pressure sensor fault. So that's F9, and that noise where you heard it banging, that's because the water was boiling in the heat exchanger and the safety devices have knocked out the burner. So as soon as it got up to the 75 degrees, it knocked the boiler off and it didn't trip the high limit stat. Okay, so that's what would happen to this boiler if the pump wouldn't work. Now it's cooled down again and it's automatically reset itself because it's cooled down, because it's not deemed a safety fault, the pump not working. So I better turn it off, hadn't I? Now the next fault I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the pump proving switch, or the low water pressure switch, or the thing that puts the actual dial on. And again, I've got this unplugged because this is still uncovered. So literally I'm just going to unplug this low water pressure switch, close it back up, plug it back in, turn it back on. So again, should go through the proving. It's reading 0 on the pressure gauge, so it's gone F9 straight away. So it's not even turned on, it went straight to F9. Even when I turned that on, just go straight to F9. So let's plug it back in. Obviously unplug it first. Plug it back in. Now reading 1.1 on the gauge. It's done its proving. And away it goes. So notice the difference there. When the pump was disconnected, it still let everything work. But when I disconnected the low water pressure sensor, it didn't work. Because the low water pressure sensor is deemed a safety device because there's no water in the system. So that's why it didn't fire up. Because it deemed it unsafe to fire up. Let's look at the next fault then. Now the next fault, what I've done is I've taken the 2 wires off the air pressure switch. I'll just put that back. So all I've done is just get a cap off an old condensate trap where it links the electronics out. This doesn't have that because it's non-condensing. So it just gives me something to link the 2 wires together. I could have used anything, but it's the first thing I could find. But anyway, I've linked the 2 wires together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on the boiler and then see what happens. So you can hear the air pressure switch had just made then. So I'm not calling for any heat, I'm not calling for any hot water. So it's gone through its pre-purge perfectly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to call for heat on the central heating. So what do you notice now? You can hear the pump come on, but no fan. So it basically knows I've bodged it and tried to bypass the air pressure switch. So it's not even brought the fan on. And it's not put a fault code up yet. It's still saying 23 degrees on the front. So it knows it's calling for heat because it's gone from the pressure to the temperature. It's got the pump running, but it hasn't run the fan, so it's not going to go into its ignition sequence. So it's not actually put a fault code up. It's just leaving it doing what it's doing. Because it knows it's been bypassed, so it doesn't need to put a fault code up. So, let's see what other things we can do with the air pressure switch then. Now, this time what I've done is I've plugged one of the cables onto the air pressure switch. Now, the cables are actually the same colour, so it technically doesn't matter which way round these 2 wires go. So again, we need to turn it on. I'm not calling for any heat. Again, it's going to go through the purge. Again, you could hear the fans come on and it made the air pressure switch. Okay, and you can hear the air pressure switch knock out. So this time I'm going to put the calling for central heating on. Again, you can hear the fan, the air pressure switch make. We've got 21 degrees on the gauge, so that knows we're asking it to do heating because it isn't showing pressure. We're at 20 degrees. Still thinking about it. Now it's put up an F2 fault. So let's turn that off. And let's find out what F2 is on our instructions. And it says F2, flashing red light, air fault, pressure switch, or no power to the fan. So it took a while for it to decide what it was doing, but it did come up with the right fault code of F2. So that's saying the air pressure switch is broken. Now this time I've put the air pressure switch back how it should be, the wires back in the right place, and shoved it back into the back of the boiler there. But this time I've disconnected the live wire going to the fan. So let's turn the boiler on. So you can hear nothing now, absolutely nothing. So we're not calling for heat or anything, but it didn't go into its pre-purge because the fan's not working. It's reading 1 bar on the pressure gauge. So if I try and call for heat, you can hear the pump come on. We're at 20 degrees. Obviously no fans come on, so no pressure switches come on. Still thinking about it. And again, it's got into that F2 fault. We don't need to look in the book because we've just seen it, because it says it was either the fan or the pressure switch. So again, it knows the fan's not working because it hasn't made that air pressure switch. Let's do the next one then. Now this time I'm going to simulate that the over temperature stat has tripped. Now this has a manual reset button in the middle, but it hasn't tripped, so I've just disconnected one of the wires, because basically it's looking for continuity across these two wires to make sure it hasn't tripped, because when it trips it breaks that continuity. So let's turn it on. It should again go through its purge because I've put the fan back again. So again, it's showing bar pressure, so it's not calling for any heat. I'm going to put the time clock back on again. I'm reading 20 degrees. Oh, and it stopped pretty damn quick. And it's now put an F9 fault on. But that was really quick how it knocked off. It didn't think about it, poof, straight off. Let's have a look in the book and see what F9 is. So according to the F9, flashing red light, water pressure sensor fault. So, could actually throw you that, couldn't it? You could be thinking it's a low water pressure sensor when it's actually the high limit start. But on the pressure gauge, it gave us the correct pressure. So, if you do get that F9 fault on these boilers, then you should be looking to see whether your high limit starter's tripped. So fault codes can send you up the wrong alley, so just be aware of that. Let's have a look at the next one then. Now, next fault, what I've done is I've disconnected the electrics from the spark generator, so we're not going to get a spark up here. So let's see what fault that throws up. So if I turn it on, Again, it's gone through its purge. Again, my time clock's turned off, so I'm not calling for any heat. And again, it's showing 1 bar on the pressure gauge. So let's call for heat. Let's see what it does. Again, fan pressure switch is on. This time, no ignition. We've got a temperature on the front, so we know it's calling for heat. And this time, it's put a fault up of F1. Now, if we look in the book, it says F1 fault is no gas, I think. So F1, flashing red light, ignition fault lockout caused by no gas or no detection. Now then, let me just turn that off and reset it. I'm going to get the blow lamp and I'm going to show you that the gas valve is still opening. So let's just put this on a low flame. Let me turn that back on, and again it's going to go through its purge. And again I'm going to keep my face well away because of health and safety. I'm just going to put that into the burner and turn it on and show you that the gas valve is still opening. There you go. So that's proved the gas valve is open and it's not a gas valve fault. But we haven't heard that ignition. I'll turn that off. So we didn't hear the so we can pretty much say that the ignition was not working, but the gas valve was still opening. So that gives you an idea of where you're looking for. Is it the spark electrodes what have gone, or is it the spark generator that's gone? So that's the fault for spark generator not working. So the last thing I want to look at in this video is what happens if the other end isn't working. So we've just seen if the ignition side isn't working, but what if flame rectification isn't working? So if I drop the flap down here, there is a little plug here, and if I undo that plug like that, and I put this back up, because that plug is linking the probe to the board. I've just checked it in the manufacturer's instructions and it is the right one. So I need to turn the power back on, I need to turn this back on, and of course it's going to go through its purge. So if I turn the time clock on now to call for heat, it should ignite and then go out. It's ignited. You can hear it still. So it didn't think it had lit right across because the ignition was still going, because flame rectification hadn't told it. So watch again, and it's put an F1 fault, which is the no gas. So it didn't know it had lit, it thought there was no gas. So if I reset it, again let's go through the purge. Listen out for the clicking. So could you see it was still clicking? And it's put the F1 fault on. So that's what would happen if flame rectification hadn't worked. And that is the end of this video on the sequence of operation of a gas boiler. So if you've liked this video, why don't you give me that thumbs up or leave a constructive comment down below. If you want to do a thumbs down, make sure you press it twice because it gives it an extra thumbs down. But if you've not subscribed to my channel, then please subscribe because it helps, and don't forget to hit that notification bell because you want YouTube to tell you that we upload videos on Mondays and Wednesdays. So all that leaves me to say is, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Cheers.